The behind the scenes part of that is I was also dealing with a lot of things that I never quite looked at. Like, for example, I was bullied as a kid. I had just a lot of trauma growing up, and I compensated for that by being a massive overachiever.
Everything leads to growth with the National Association of Sales Professionals. The Leads to Growth podcast with the National Association of Sales Professionals provides in-depth discussions, sharing the best sales, prospecting, influence, and communication skills, as well as sales training techniques to take your professional sales career to the next level.
Hello and welcome back to another Leads to Growth podcast. We're here with the NASP, the National Association of Sales Professionals, and we have a very special guest with us today. Ms. Christine Hassler is the best-selling author of 3 books, most recently, Expectation Hangover. Love that title. Free yourself from the past, to change your present, and get what you really want. What a beautiful title. She left her successful job as a Hollywood agent to pursue a life she could be passionate about. For over a decade as a keynote speaker, retreat facilitator, spiritual psychologist, and life coach, the host of a top-rated podcast, Over It and On With It, she has been teaching and inspiring people around the world. Christine believes once we get out of our own way, we can show up to make meaningful impact where we want to make it. Christine, thank you so much for being with us here today. Really appreciate you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I love these conversations.
As do I. We've had a good chance to chit chat. I know you just recently back from some retreats and tours. Where'd you just get back from?
So I just got back from speaking in Denver, and then I was up in LA for work, and then I was speaking in Canada.
Beautiful, beautiful. The world tour never ends, does it?
Oh, it doesn't. But I tell you, flying's getting harder and harder.
We'll have to go private here soon enough, right?
Exactly. Goals. Hashtag goals.
Right. That's right. It's a great place to start. Well, Christine, your story is just beautiful. We had a chance just to hear some snippets about it, but to hear the transition that you've gone from Hollywood to just really influencing, having an impact on so many people's lives, talking about so many different topics. And today we're here to talk about selling from the heart. Really where you come from, right? Your intent is so impactful and really the secret to true influence. So if you could tell us your story a little bit, how you got to where you are today, and we'll go from there.
Well, if I told you the whole story, we'd be here for days, but I'll tell you the abridged version. And I love that you described it as beautiful because it didn't feel beautiful going through it. But in hindsight, it definitely is. So there's many stories that have led me to where I am today. I'll tell you the one that was the most impactful in terms of making my transition into this. So like you mentioned, I worked in Hollywood. I was an agent. So I was in sales. An agent is completely 1000% a sales job. I was selling writers, producers, and directors. And the funny thing was, I always wanted to pursue a career in Hollywood, but I never really thought of myself as a salesperson. I never thought I liked it. I never thought I'd be any good at it. But it turns out I kind of was, especially if I was very passionate about the project. The behind the scenes part of that is I was also dealing with a lot of things that I never quite looked at. Like, for example, I was bullied as a kid. I had just a lot of trauma growing up, and I compensated for that by being a massive overachiever. So inside, I was incredibly insecure with this kind of mission to prove myself in the world. And of course, I picked Hollywood, which is one of the most competitive industries out there. And then I picked doing sales in Hollywood. So one of my core wounds was rejection. And here I am, this insecure person trying to prove myself in a competitive male-driven industry. And I worked really, really hard. Again, it was that overachiever thing, that just go, trying to hit my numbers, trying to impress my boss, trying to compete with the market. And I eventually reached a place of burnout. And not only burnout because of the job, but burnout because of the way I was doing the job, right? Because there are demanding jobs. That's one division of stress. But then the other element that adds to the stress is how we relate to that job, like how we do that job. And so not only was the job hard, but I was incredibly hard on myself in here. So it like tripled my stress level. So I ended up resigning from that. It wasn't an overnight decision. It was a decision I struggled with for a long time because my whole identity was wrapped up in my career. And I was already dealing with depression. I was actually diagnosed with depression when I was 11 and put on medication for it. I just pummeled into a worse depression. And then things got better before they got worse. So I was engaged and my fiance called off the wedding about 6 months before. I was having trouble with my family, stopped speaking to my mom for a while. I was in debt. My health was really, really suffering. And I had, lost my career and the love of my life. So I really hit a pretty big rock bottom at 26. And I'm sure people listening and watching have been through worse. But for me at that time, it was pretty low. And I had a powerful insight one night laying on my bathroom floor crying and feeling sorry for myself that the common denominator in all of the things going wrong in my life was me. And so if I created them, then maybe I could create something differently. And that was I could have gone either way without awareness. I could have gone into victimhood of, wow, I just really suck at life. Life punishes me and nothing works out for me. Or, wow, I'm a powerful creator. I'm just not creating what I want. So that's when I got super passionate and curious about personal development. Now, I had been in therapy since I was 11, so I could psychoanalyze myself to death. I knew all my issues, but things weren't really changing. And a lot of people get stuck in that trap when they've done like a lot of mind psychological work. They have all the awareness, but it isn't really integrating, so things aren't changing. And that's where I was. And so I got into life coaching and personal development, NLP, and then I went back and got my master's degree in spiritual psychology. And like things just began to change because I began to change from the inside out. So that's what led me now to write books and host a podcast and retreats and be a corporate speaker and all of these things that were never planned, but came from the result of really, I became my own best client. And I truly believe that when we approach anything from the inside out, abundance from the inside out, leadership from the inside out, sales from the inside out, relationships, when we're not looking out there for the solution or the answer or the feel better, whatever, then our life starts to change because we realize how powerful we are. And that's actually really good news versus going into victimhood.
Absolutely. And I love how you framed that. It's the awareness first, and then you have to take a decision.
Yeah.
Right. And far too often I hear people say, well, I'm just going to accept it.
Yeah.
It's almost like not making a decision.
Right.
Which is still a decision, right? You can't, the decision not to move is still a decision.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think acceptance is massively important, but I think some people say they're accepting something or surrendering when they're really going in resignation.
That's a
so
good
like
decision.
Acceptance is huge. And it's actually the first, I learned from my spiritual teachers that acceptance is the first law of spirituality. If you want to become a more spiritual person, acceptance. So it's accepting. Yeah, it's accepting what is. I love Byron Katie. She says that when you fight with reality, you only lose 100% of the time. And it's true. It's true. So like I can look at this glass and go, all right, it's like 75% empty. I can get upset about that, or I can just accept that that's what it is and then move from there. But that's way different than resignation. Resignation's kind of like an F it. There's nothing I can do about it. I'm just going to like life happens to me and I'm just going to like sit in this.
Victim.
Acceptance opens the space of, okay, this is what is happening right now. How do I want to respond to it?
It's a beautiful choice of words and a beautiful distinction. I love how you mentioned that you didn't intentionally go into sales. And I think that's a story that so many people end up in. We talk to so many people on a daily basis that go into marketing. They go into teaching. They go into something that they believe is their dream, and whether they don't like it, whether it doesn't work out for them, or something happens and they end up in some form of sales.
Yeah.
What advice would you give somebody who falls into sales?
Well, first get up. Okay. So I don't really believe anything happens by accident or random. Awesome. And I think that a lot of people find themselves in sales because it's going to give them an opportunity to develop greater degrees of self-confidence and self-worth. You don't develop courage by never being scared, right? The only way to develop courage is to feel fear and move forward anyway. So I think a lot of people that didn't think they were going to end up in sales end up there for a couple reasons. One, it can be a massive opportunity to learn some incredible skills. But two, because there's probably something personally for them to learn about how to be more confident, how to not take rejection personally, how to have value and self-worth, how to really build rapport and connect with people. I have a lot of introverts that end up in sales that just go, it's so hard for me because I'm just not good at talking to people. And I'm like, well, that's just a belief because you label yourself as an introvert. There's a major growth opportunity. Actually, as an introvert, you do very well connecting one-on-one to people. So right. I think sales, that we can talk about the career aspect, right? Mm-hmm. But since I'm a life coach and a spiritual psychologist, I like to look at, all right, what is the life lessons aspect? And I think there's nothing better than working in sales to really have issues around self-worth, value, confidence, and rejection come forward.
That's beautiful. And I think just that change of perspective of what your job is, right? I think far too often, I remember me going through my 20s, and I probably could fill up a whole desk drawer full of business cards of different companies that I work for or different, organizations that I started. And almost every time I was distraught when the business didn't go the direction I'd planned or when it didn't work out. And it wasn't until later on down the road, as we talked about, calling that journey a beautiful journey, right? It wasn't until later on down the road when I saw, oh, well, I learned that skill there. I learned this skill there. I learned these things here. How were you able to learn the skill of face that fear of rejection? I mean, because let's be honest, that's a huge skill in sales, a huge skill in speaking. I mean, that's probably the biggest fear of speaking is the rejection that you get on a whole level, right? So how were you able to take this thing that was debilitating for you at some point and turn it into your superpower?
Well, it definitely wasn't an overnight thing. And the first is I had to experience a lot of it and a lot of the pain of it, not just in my professional life, but my personal life. Obviously, it was a theme. I mentioned there was the fiance thing. So for me, it was all about going back because none of us, so as kids, we didn't struggle with rejection or confidence issues until something happened that made us start to doubt ourselves and think something was wrong with us. Mm-hmm. So until I started being teased and talked badly about by other girls, I didn't think anything was wrong with me. As soon as that happened, I formed the belief I'm unlikable, there's something wrong with me. Mm. So every time there was a rejection, professionally or personally, it hit that button. It hit that core wound. So how I dealt with it is I had to go back to the origin. Like, where did this rejection story really begin? Mm. And I see this, I've been a coach now for almost 15 years, and people call in on the podcast and people come to retreats and they have a question, and 100% of the time, okay, maybe 99, it stems back to something that happened a long time ago. Yeah. So much of our adult life is just triggering us to actually look at unresolved issues as a kid. Mm-hmm. So anybody that's has like a rejection button, it's because you felt rejected at some tender time in your life and you still kind of carry around that wound. So I had to go back and work with that inner fourth grader inside of me and talk to her. There's a process I teach. I've adapted it from something called Gestalt and from things I've learned. I call it the empty chair process. And I would sit in one chair and my fourth grade self would sit in the other. And literally I'd be both parts and I'd move back and forth. And I'd have that fourth grade girl talk to me and I'd talk to her about what that experience was like and help her form a new story and a new belief system around it. Beautiful. So it was kind of going back and healing those things. And also like changing how I responded to rejection. So in the past, when I would get a no to a sales pitch or whatever I was getting rejected by, the thought would immediately go to, I suck. I did something wrong. I'm not good enough. So here's how it made me quote unquote better at my job. That terrible harshness that I put on myself just made me work harder and try harder, but it made me hate sales more. So even though it was effective, it was like pushing. So when that would happen, I would have to catch myself and go, wait a second, I didn't do anything wrong. This just wasn't a fit. What can I learn from this situation? What can I learn? Because a lot of times when we're trying to shift these things, we try to go from super negative to super positive, and the brain doesn't flip that quick. You can't go from I suck to I'm amazing. Like the brain is like, what are you doing? I don't believe you for a second. But you can go from something's wrong with me, I did a bad job, to, okay, I did the best I can. That wasn't a fit. What did I learn from that? Mm-hmm. And you become that inner coach with yourself versus that inner critic. And you also, like, it's so important. Human beings, we really are not great at acknowledging ourselves inwardly. Unless we, tick something off. Like if we hit our sales goals, then it's like, okay, I did well. But we don't acknowledge ourselves for, wow, like I worked really hard. I tried really hard. I really connected to that person. I gave it my all. We don't ever really acknowledge the process or the progress or the qualities that came out of us while we were doing it. We just acknowledge the result. Mm-hmm. So that was the other part of getting over rejection, especially in sales, is if I got to know, really acknowledge all the things that I did well. And I got super curious. So Jill Esplin, who's worked with me for 9 years, she is so freaking good at sales. Like, just to give you an example, we all went out to dinner one night with a retreat, and there were like 20 things on the menu. And she starts going on and on about the salmon tacos and how amazing they are. Everyone at the table, except me, because I had another thing I like there better, ordered the freaking salmon tacos because she's so enrolling in her presence because she's passionate about it. The other thing is she's super curious. So when she gets a no, she gets curious. I'm just curious. Why is this a no for you? Like, why doesn't it fit? Not in a pushy way, but when our questions can ride on the energy of curiosity and we can get super, super curious about things, then we don't take things as personally. And it creates better rapport with the other person. So that was another big thing in navigating rejection, is instead of making the assumption that I did something wrong or I wasn't enough in some way, I got super curious instead.
I love that. I absolutely love that. It's such a simple pattern that most people take with us, right? And like you said, it comes from us as kids. We get spanked on the hand or get told, no, we're in trouble enough because of we failed, and we develop a reaction to it. When I do something wrong, I'm in trouble. I've done wrong. Exactly. And now we have to unpack that. Yep. And we have to unlearn that, and we have to roll out that old limiting belief and replace it with something. And totally. I really love that practice. That's that just that little connection of it's not my fault. Let's be curious on and I like how you phrase it too. Why is it a no for you?
Exactly.
Not the absoluteness of why is that no, but why is it a no for you? Yep. Just curiosity. Very, very cool. I really appreciate that. Mm-hmm. So now tell me about, you speak now on a regular basis. Yeah. Retreats, you help people find that inner power. Tell me more about where you've gone now and what you do on such a large scale. I'm really enchanted. I'm intrigued. I really love the element of stage presence and stage power and impact, and just the reach and just the specialness of sharing something from the stage.
Yeah. Well, I'll share something that was a really valuable turning point in my speaking career.
Please.
And that was when I stopped trying to be like all the other speakers out there. And I just, because, that's the old story too. The little girl who didn't fit in. Okay, well, if I'm just like the popular girls, then I'll be liked.
Yeah, doesn't fitting in feels this way, then fitting in must feel.
Yes. And so, I'd be up there with my PowerPoints and my like hand move, I just trying to do the speaker things or try to be really big and entertaining. And finally, I met a woman named Connie Podesta, who's a speaker, and she's like one of the leading speakers in the market, and she's just fabulous. And she said to me, because she watched me speak, and she said, "Where are you? I've seen you as a coach. I've seen you work your magic. Where is that part of you on stage? Why are you using this PowerPoint? You don't need it. Just get up there and connect. You don't need a script. You're not using your gifts." So that was about 3 or 4 years ago, and I completely stopped using PowerPoint. I stopped preparing and rehearsing for speeches. I would if there's a certain group I need to talk to or whatever, I'll do some research and have some structure. But my whole intention when I get up on a stage, really when I'm doing anything, is to connect to one person or 5,000 people and authentically be me, and then sort of get out of the way and let the magic happen. Because I've learned that in any interaction, whether it's speaker to thousands, salesperson to client, whatever, spouse to spouse, if you kind of get out of the way, there's a beautiful dance that can happen.
Absolutely.
But when we're trying to be strategic versus authentic in our communication, I think we can get in trouble. And I think that's when a lot of people in sales start to get frustrated and aren't as successful, because they're trying to follow a formula and a strategy rather than being authentically them and learning their unique approach. Now, it took me a second. The first time I got up on stage with no PowerPoint and no notes and just a microphone.
Ooh, that must have been a fun day.
Oh, yeah. I was like, let me wear all black so all the sweat that is coming out of me does not show. I was like, so nervous. And it was bumpy. It wasn't my best speech.
Sure.
However, it was the beginning of something really beautiful. It was the beginning of me stepping more authentically into myself.
Absolutely.
So I think that really applies to sales too, because depending if we're working for ourselves or working for a company or whatever it may be, there may be some kind of a script or a strategy or whatever. But even within that, you can authentically be you, and you can authentically communicate and connect. And, even this weekend when I was speaking to the dentist, there were about 150, and there was a stage, but I was the last speaker. They were sitting at tables, and I didn't get on the stage. I stayed on the floor, and I walked around, and I connected with people as I was talking. And when you give yourself freedom to be authentic, you can sort of break the rules, because what are the rules anyway? They're just kind of set up. They're set up for us because a lot of us are too afraid to be authentic. We think we need the training wheels when we don't. And I think especially in today's world where people are craving transparency and authenticity, that's just such a huge thing for all of us to step more into.
I completely agree. And I absolutely love it. Too many people, and the sales script is a structure, as an outline, as a baseline, right? When you drive down the road and you're going to the store that you go to 100 times and the road's blocked, or you don't just stand there and wait until something clears up. You take a turn, you go another way.
Yeah.
And I like it all. It also comes back to that curiosity, right?
Totally.
You have that curiosity mindset. You're wondering how you're going to get to the outcome in which you have in your mind, and you're curious and you utilize things that happen, which bring you a whole nother element as a speaker.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, as being in a room before with some of the most powerful speakers, and when somebody just connects with you, when they take the time to develop some rapport and to make that connection with you, it takes everything else they do from that point on, and it makes it 10 times more impactful.
Yeah.
And so your genuineness seeps through the screen already. So I really appreciate that.
Well,
That's
thank
awesome.
you. Thank you. It comes down to back to kind of circling back to the word acceptance. Life just becomes so much better when you accept yourself. Like, I'm not perfect at all. I've let that expectation go. But I've just found that, the being hard on myself as a way to motivate myself was really depleting. And I think that that's why so many people suffer with depression, anxiety, stress, physical illness, all that kind of thing. Because, I ask when I get up in front of rooms, if you talk to your friends like you often talk to yourself in your own head, how many
I have no friends no more.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so that level of self-acceptance, and I think we're afraid that if we accept ourselves, we'll be inferior. We won't play our A game. But actually, when you accept yourself, then you really step into your superpowers, and life becomes a whole lot easier. Now, that said, I'm always looking to grow. I always have coaches. I'm going to another workshop this weekend. Like, I love to learn and I love to grow. But my come from is no longer something's wrong with me, I'm broken, and I need to fix it. My come from is, how do I explore this even more? How do I get even better? What's the next thing I can learn? Again, it's that curiosity, energy that the come from is. So, we're never there, but we're not broken along the way. Absolutely.
Grateful and fulfilled, just not satisfied yet.
Yeah. Well, and it's like, I can be satisfied in the moment and want more.
Absolutely.
It's like I'm satisfied from my smoothie I had an hour ago, but I'm going to be hungry again in a couple hours. You know?
Right? You might want to upgrade that smoothie a little bit too at some point, right?
Oh, you should see all the stuff we put in our smoothies.
I can only imagine. Trust me, our crew rolls smoothie heavy as well. So
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Christine, I've had a lot of fun. I'm sure I could talk to you for hours and hours, and I'm sure our audience would love it as well. But I know you're a busy person, and I really, really appreciate you taking the time to tell just such a personal, beautiful story that everyone can identify with.
Yeah.
And also people can see that sales is everywhere.
Yeah.
Right? And it starts intrapersonally and with ourselves first, and then we bring it out to everybody else.
Yeah.
Any closing notes for actually, you know what? I've got one beautiful question I want to close with. Well, before I ask where our audience can follow you more, what is one thing that our audience could take away? One thing that they could take away and apply right away that would really help them with that self-love, would help them get over that fear of, making those calls and rejection.
Mm-hmm. Well, we talked about in the beginning, sales from your heart, right?
Mm.
So before you make that phone call, before you have that meeting, whatever it is, take a deep breath and just drop into your heart and connect with the other person energetically, even before you get on the phone. And even your voice will change if you're talking from more your heart than your head. And focus on just having a conversation with another human being. And focus on just connecting and just being curious and coming more from your heart and really what your intention is. Because that's one thing we talk about, like Jill and I, when we're enrolling in retreats or enrolling clients or selling any of our online programs or any of those kinds of things. We often use the word enroll versus sell.
You said it a couple times.
Yeah. And we really look at it as, what are we really giving by offering this service? We don't look at it like a win-lose kind of thing, right? We win because we get your money and you lose because you're losing money. We look at it as a total win-win. And I think sales, it can have a negative connotation to it. And I think that gets in a lot of salespeople's way. But if you really see yourself as service-based professionals, because that's what you're doing, you're connecting people with a product or a program or a service that may enhance the quality of their life. So look at your come from. Don't look at it like you're taking their money. Don't look at it like you're taking anything. Think of the value you are adding versus being a sleazy salesperson.
I love it. I'm not going to say another word. Where can our audience continue to follow you, Christine?
Well, if anyone wants to come and work on any of that childhood stuff I was talking about, I have an amazing retreat, a signature retreat that happens in March. You can go to christinehassler.com/spring-retreat. If you want to listen to live life coaching episodes, you can go to Over It and On With It, my podcast. And then my favorite social media app is Instagram, Christine Hassler. And then my website, christinehassler.com. You can take my free coaching assessment. And I have all kinds of things there, online courses, meditations, a journal to change behavior. You can have all kinds of fun there.
Awesome. And I love it. You said the word that reminds me of this whole podcast and probably the way you live your life. Fun.
Yeah. Well, not all the time, but a lot of the time.
Most of the time, right?
Yes.
Awesome.
I try. It's just like, when I got into a relationship with my fiance, I'm like, it is my personal mission to make you laugh every single day. Every single day. And that's, it's just like, how can we add more fun to everything in our life? And there are those moments where we need to be serious and heart-centered, but lightness and curiosity, like so many of those childlike qualities that, are so magical, we just get way too serious as adults.
I completely agree. We need to roll down a grassy hill every now and again, right?
Yeah. And the best salespeople are the people that have the most fun. So
always by far, hands down. Well, that was great. That's another Leads to Growth podcast with Christine Hassler. Thank you so much, Christine. All right, I'll enjoy the podcast. Check out the others. Check out some Daily Dose videos. Come back, become a member, do all the good things, and grow your sales by growing yourself. Cheers.